Welcome again, right? I mean, you haven't been welcomed enough, so I'm glad you're all here. This is a really full house, so I'm really glad to see this. Usually when I hold my lectures in here, the room isn't quite as full, so thank you for being here. I guess the topic of careers is a big draw, so maybe more so than statistics. Okay, well, so I've got the easy job today, right? So I'll just get to ask some questions here to our esteemed panel members. And they have the hard job, and they have to answer my inane questions. And then I'll open it up after we've done this for a while. I'll open it up to questions from the audience, right? So anything that you've always wanted to ask about supply chain, or what do you do, how do you do it, how do you get into it, please do feel free to ask our panel members about that. Okay? So I guess without further ado, I'd like to introduce our four panel members. So maybe I will start with Phillyne. I'm trying to be a gentleman, at least tonight. Phillyne is probably the more junior member on this panel tonight. Not much longer, probably, but anyway. She is working as a supply chain analyst at Niagara Bottling. And then we have, if I may go over here, Wen Chang, who is founder and CEO of two trade-oriented companies, and hopefully you will tell us much more about this than I can. Here we have Mike Mellano, who is VP of Production and VP of Farming at Mellano Farming Operation, which is an operation that grows and distributes cut flowers. So this is quite an interesting combination here. And finally, we have Lloyd McKinney, who oversees regional procurement for Northrop Grumman in the San Diego area. Okay? So, thanks very much to the panel members for agreeing to be here and taking our questions and sharing their expertise. So maybe if we can get started with a round of applause. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So if you, maybe we'll just get settled down here. Very good. So I just gave the very brief introduction of the panel members, which is not nearly enough. So why don't we get started by maybe starting with Lloyd, or okay.
Ladies
Lloyd,
first.
you're making me look bad. You're making me look bad. You're supposed to overlook this. There goes my tenure application. Very good. Very good. Okay, ladies first. So maybe Phillyne, could you tell us a little bit more about what you do, what your company does, more than I just am able to tell? Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Phillyne Shiu. I'm a supply chain professional with a focus in raw materials and process improvement. So my main job at my company is I work for Niagara company, so it's a water company. So we do private label bottle for Costco, Walmart, Members Mark, and all the Trader Joe's and all the other private companies. So I'm just gonna give an example. So my main job is just to buy these labels. That's what I do every day for more 10 hours every day. So yeah, so that's my main job in replenishment. So I'm focusing mainly on raw materials and also with process improvement. And right now we're having a software that's helping us to do all of this. And I'm also helping to create the MRP with IT right now. So yeah, that's it.
So when you say you're buying labels all day,
Yes.
that sounds a bit boring, but I'm sure it's not.
Yeah, so I do manage around 2,000 SKUs every day. So I do have to take a look at it. So what I do is I look at our overall demand, I look at our forecast, and I look at I have to make sure that I'm buying according to our price bracket. So there's a lot of metric that I have to go over. So it might sound like, I'm just buying labels, but imagine going through the Excel sheet with over 2,000 labels, and we do have 26 manufacturing plants all over the US and one in Mexico. and we have to deal with 11 national and international suppliers. So that's I also deal with that.
Thank you. Wen?
Thank you, Gary, and thanks for having me. Wen Chang from Trade Union International. We basically have three companies. One is making, manufacturing, and distribution of aluminum alloy wheels for OE and for aftermarket. And the other company, we are the official licensee by all the professional sports leagues, including NFL and NBA and Major League Baseball and many colleges, not including Claremont colleges yet. So we had to work on that. All right. But anyway, so we are the national distributor for this, and we also have a small company doing the development project, and we have two other development projects, one over in Montclair with the 11 buildings, one over in Rancho Cucamonga for 14 buildings over there. My wife and I, we are all immigrants coming from Taiwan originally. Glad to know Jean. The dean is going to visit Taiwan first time. And anyway, so since we came over here in 1981, so we don't know what to do. So whatever we touch, we try to make it happen, make it profitable. So ended up with 3 different industries. So that's what we do now today. In terms of how do I get involved into a supply chain, I think it's since I have to bring the products from all over from the world and also bring the products to the end consumer or stores. So supply chain is certainly inevitable. It's part of my business. Without it, we cannot be in business. So we can talk about that later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you are, you just forgot to mention that you used to be actually mayor of the city of Diamond Bar a few times.
Yes, Gary, thank you. You know, that is a side job. And especially being an immigrant, I never thought of this can happen to me. And honestly and very humbly saying that with all the honor that being an immigrant can be elected as an elected official, but I always call myself public servant, and because I never call myself official because I'm over there to serve them. So I never planned to it. People forced me in, and honestly, I really enjoyed it, and I feel that's very, very much rewarding. And we talk about that, Gary. You want me to carry on for a little bit?
Just for a few minutes,
right.
Sure.
And people ask me, how come you got involved into politics? I said, honestly, I don't know. So people ask me, do you like politics? I said, I do like politics, and I do know politics because I study a lot of history, and I enjoyed it. And I read a lot of editorial column for many different newspapers, so I enjoyed it. But anyway, I really feel the job is very rewarding and very, I enjoyed it because I feel that if I can do make a difference for the people, that's the part I really like it. And people say, just like Gary asked me, say, hey, how do you please the people? Because I know this job is, people say, it's not an appreciative job and no reward job. I said, yes. However, I did find differently, and I enjoyed it. And I'm so humbled that I can be a part of the public servant in this greatest nation on earth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't mean it.
Mike, please.
Sure. I'm Mike Mellano, and our family business is Mellano and Company. We are third generation. I'd like to call myself a third generation farmer, flower farmer. It's one of the rare birds that's out there in this world today. We farm and distribute flowers throughout Southern California and across the United States. We farm primarily in San Diego County and Oceanside. We employ about 250 people company-wide. About half are farm workers, the other half are involved in the sales and distribution of our product. We have 5 locations throughout 4 in California and 1 in Nevada and Las Vegas. And the supply chain is critical to what we do. And when you look at our company, and not only do we farm, but we procure a tremendous amount of product from around the world. It's an international business these days. Majority of flowers, most people don't know, come in from Colombia and South America and Ecuador. So you have to be very, very dialed into what's going on, a highly perishable commodity, and so really, really key that you have good people knowing what they're doing from that perspective. And then when you go on down into the other parts of our business, farming is definitely dependent on influx of goods. We put things together and end up with a flower that people buy and use in their weddings or parties. So a lot going on in our business.
Very interesting. Lloyd?
Greetings all. My name is Hello. Greetings. My name is Lloyd McKinney. I'm with Northrop Grumman Corporation, and currently I'm with the mission systems sector, and that's been about 6 months. Prior to that, I was with the aerospace systems sector, which primarily dealt with satellites, airplanes, from a perspective of delivering those products to the government and or other foreign interest. Currently, I'm the Western Region Manager for Airborne Communications for the mission systems sector. And basically, I have about 50 people within my organization. I have 3 managers. I have basically separated by commodity teams. So we support the warfighter, we support the F-35 program. You guys probably saw those posters out there. So we do the comm systems for the F-35 and upgrades of existing F-16, F-22, and other type of communication systems. A lot of what we do as well is support the warfighter in the field with various communication systems to allow them to communicate within theater and also to get their command and other directions from whether it be the Pentagon or other places, either domestically or internationally.
Thank you very much, Lloyd. So I think from my perspective, this is a really interesting panel because we've got so many different industry perspectives here, right? We've got aerospace, we've got perishable goods, flowers, farming, we've got bottling, and we've got actual trade distribution. So my first question, or my second question perhaps if you're keeping count, would be, can you lead us through sort of the range of activities that you do in your job, and what might a typical, if that exists, what might a typical day look like for you? What kind of activities do you do during a day? How broad is that range? Who do you interact with? Things like that. And I know that Phillyne has sort of already answered that question, so I'll just ask Lloyd to start. Yeah? Okay. Is that okay? Yeah.
Let's see, a typical day. Let me just go back to yesterday. So yesterday I was doing an event in Los Angeles, about to do a breakfast event, and I got a call. And so immediately my plans for yesterday changed because I had to go back down to San Diego to support a manufacturing line that needed some components. And that's basically what we call this line down. And so basically manufacturing line is stopped. And so my team, which is procurement, we provide the parts for that. So we had to get to the root cause of why the part wasn't on the line when the line needed it. So part of global supply chain and having parts management is the proper planning to be sure that all stakeholders are aligned with the needs and what the requirements are. So I had to immediately go back down to San Diego and address that. So I, in the meantime, on the way down there, coordinating with my managers to find out what the situation was, and so yesterday was trying to be sure that we can get that line back up as quickly as we could. Basically, it was to support a program that was a government contract, so we have milestones, deliverables, and payment, and so deliveries determine what the cash flow is, particularly at this time of year, end of the year, so you're trying to hit your targets for sales, and so it's really not a good time for a line to go down when you can't complete the product. But typically, a day for me would be working with various programs. I probably deal with about 30 different programs. They deal with government, some are commercial. We have federal customers, state customers. But primarily, the ones that we deal with the most, that are the highest priority for us now, are those that deal with the warfighter in theater. And we have various communication systems that they rely upon. And that's the satisfaction I get from my job. My team's job is the fact that we enable our warfighters to come back home safely. We enable our warfighters to do the things that they do within theater, to communicate with each other and other allied forces to achieve the objectives that we have. So with my team, I have a team in San Diego, team in Los Angeles, team in San Jose, team in Sacramento. So I say Western region. You say, well, how do you get out to Florida? So I have a team in Orlando, Florida. Well, the team in Sacramento has a couple people that are located in Orlando, Florida. And so I make sure that the program priorities are established, determined, that the proper planning is been coordinated. So I'm in the global supply chain organization. So within the mission systems sector, that means subcontracts organizations and the procurement organization. So I'm responsible for the procurement organization. I have a counterpart that's on the eastern region, located in Baltimore. And so that's part of global supply chain. So we also have a support organization, and those are global supply chain, the global supply chain team, or global supply chain program planners, managers, and administrators. And so there's a lot of coordination that goes on between the planners, the MRP systems, SAP systems, the actual planning personnel within the actual programs, manufacturing, quality. There's a lot of different disciplines that come into effect as far as they need to be coordinated with. Say a typical day, so part of my day 2 days ago was to attend an out brief. And so we get a lot of surveillance and compliance audits with various agencies and regulators. So this particular one was a AS 9100 quality audit that was in San Diego. And then last week we had a BSI audit up in Sacramento. So a lot of planning preparation goes into that. And basically what they want to see is that that your teams are complying with the regulations, quality requirements. Because remember, a lot of our product ends up in the hands of the warfighter. So imagine your warfighter and you call in support. Well, it needs to, if you need a ordnance dropped, to my left, then that's where it needs to be. They don't want it, somewhere else, because you have an issue that needs to be taken care of. So that's kind of what I do on a daily basis, just making sure that my teams have what they need, resources, and just break down any barriers that they need to get done what they need to do.
Very interesting, thank you. You mentioned that line stoppage as an example, right? So can you sort of ballpark an example and sample what 1 hour of lost production or 1 hour of line stoppage might cost the company? Is it possible to do that? I mean, just, ballpark?
So I could ballpark it. Let's say the asset out the door is 85 million. And so that's the asset. So a subcontractor part component, it could be, they could range from hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars. But as far as per hour, depending upon where it is, where it happens in the line, depending upon how many people are in that line, basically you're paying somebody to just stand there until the line gets back up. And depending upon when it happens and how much advance notice, you might be able to reassign personnel to do other things. But sometimes it's, somebody's manufacturing process in the flow, they call for a part, and then it's not there. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, it could be pretty, not catastrophic, but have a significant schedule impact. And so So depending upon, the component, the customer, you might be on an award fee type of a contract or an incentive type of contract where you miss a schedule, it's going to cost you money, liquidated damages out of your profits. Others, you might be able to miss a schedule and then negotiate some kind of consideration for a workaround or another delivery date. So it just kind of depends on the situation, but the magnitude varies.
Okay, thank you. Mike, you want to walk us through what your day looks like?
My days are never the same. I guess that's the safest way to say it. It's agriculture and farming in our world is completely different than a lot of others. Dealing with a perishable commodity creates a certain set of urgency that doesn't happen in other ways. Now, mind you, in my day, I'm not really directly involved personally in the supply chain. I'm more of an administrator. I was recently made the CEO of our company, and so a big part of my day right now is working with our team, realigning their thought focus, re-strategizing the company, and looking to what we're going to be in the future. Agriculture, and especially our business being import impacted, is going through a tremendous amount of change at the moment. The state of California, with the increase in regulations, increase in minimum wage structures, all those things are impacting us very dramatically, and we're having to compete against Mexico, Colombia, and Ecuador. So as the CEO now, I'm trying to refocus the team, re-energize them, get them on task, and get us on a path that in 5 or 10 years we're sustainable and profitable and viable. So that's a big part of my day right now. But in addition to that, I'm still the primary farmer and driver of our agricultural operation. And I'm fortunate that I have a really good team of people underneath me that have many, many years of experience and for the most part know what to do on a day-to-day basis. That makes my job very easy. Most of the time, as far as farming is concerned, I'm just dealing with fires and troubles and problems that may pop up on a day-to-day basis, or where somebody's gotten off track on an objective or a particular task or particular plan that we had in place. But problems happen a lot. You're dealing with a living organism, a plant that's subject to the environment, that's subject to diseases and pathogens and organisms that want to eat it. And so we have to be nimble, quick, and reactive. When you look at the supply chain from that point of view, raw materials coming in, seeds, plants, crop protection materials, fertilizers, water, you name it, there's a whole broad spectrum of products that need to come in to a farm, be combined in the right way to ultimately end up with a product that's sellable. It's a dynamic environment and things change, and so you can't really come up with a recipe all the time that just plug and play and you get what you want. So we deal with that on a regular basis. Then the other part of our business, which is heavily focused on procuring flowers around the world and distributing those to retail flower shops or supermarkets or online bouquet fulfillment centers or our own online bouquet, has its own set of challenges. And right now, it's a very dynamic time in the supply chain for that particular angle. Even though it's not a big time of year for us, our big sales happen around holidays: Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas. So this time of the year is kind of a downtime, but this country is dependent on offshore production, dependent on Colombia and Ecuador primarily, a little bit out of Africa, a little bit out of Holland. These recent hurricanes created chaos, just chaos. You have major airports closed. You have airlines that no longer have the planes that they used to have to fly the product in. You have airlines that have gone bankrupt in the recent 2 or 3 weeks, airlines that have closed down. And so our customers still have strong demand, but we can't get the lift, we can't get the product, we can't get it into the United States, into California. The primary path out of South America is into Miami. So the majority of the product hits Miami, goes through USDA facilities, through customs, inspected, and then redistributed back to the West Coast or wherever it's going to be. So that's our normal path right now. Who knows? It's wherever we can get it. It's creating a tremendous amount of cost overruns, but our primary focus is making sure that our customers are fulfilled. It's a short-term issue that we're dealing with at this moment in time. At the same time you got the hurricane hitting, you have a major volcano talking about blowing up in Ecuador, and so that's created issues with their airport. A lot of their planes are grounded, they're not flying out, they're sitting there waiting for things to clear so that they can get in the air again and come through. Mexico City is also a major transportation hub. Things fly into Mexico City, and with the earthquakes and the various things going on in Mexico, that's in disruption. So my brother, fortunately, he's the one that gets to deal with that kind of stuff, is pulling a lot of the hairs out of his head right now, trying to figure out how he's going to do damage control and make sure that we fulfill our commitments and our orders to all the people that depend on us for their weddings and parties. The flip side to that is it's created a tremendous amount of demand for California producers. And so we, as a California producer, are seeing a big uptick in people wanting to buy from us. People that haven't bought from us in years, all of a sudden want to be our good friends because we have flowers. So we're having to deal with that and the relationships and the issues that come along because of that. It's a good problem. Unfortunately, you can't see weather like this happening far enough out to go out and plant the flowers and make them come in time for backfill. So that's the challenge to that. The other big part of my day, realistically speaking, is politics. Not being mayor or anything like that, but farming is a very visible industry. It's very much a part of the environment. We have to do a tremendous amount of work with our elected officials, both in the state and on the federal level, to make sure that they understand what it is we're doing, how we're doing it, why we do it, making sure that we're being good stewards of the land, good stewards of the people, and making sure all these pieces flow. So years ago I went to, I'm a graduate of UC Riverside up the road here. Both my wife and I got our PhDs there. I specialized in plant pathology and really focused on genetic engineering and genetic manipulation of pathogenic bacteria. When I got out, decided to become a farmer, figuring you plant, naively you plant a plant, you water it, you pick it, you sell it, you make a boatload of money. And quickly found out that you don't make a boatload of money, and you spend a big part of your day doing this political work, trying to make sure that the actions that our congressmen and senators and state assembly members take don't ultimately put us out of business. So it's a very, very important and very big part of my day.
Very interesting. Thank you. Phillyne?
Sure. Hi, so I work for Niagara Bottling Company. We are a vertically integrated manufacturing company. So just imagine that our raw materials come in as pellets, and as soon as it comes inside our plant as pellets, but it comes out of the manufacturing plants as water bottles. So we do have a big outreach. We do have a big outreach to other departments. So on my day-to-day, since I'm focusing primarily on labels, it's gonna get technical, but I promise it's gonna get like really nice. I look at our demand, and I look at the inventory in-house for all the 26 manufacturing plants and make sure that we do have the labels in-house to support our production. And also I look at the supplier inventory to make sure that we do have labels in-house and also at the supplier that's ready to be printed to support our production, to support our future productions and also our forecast. But on top of that, on a weekly basis, since we're vertically integrated, I get to deal with IT. They do have a lot of, we're doing our homegrown MRP, so they're testing it with us right now. So this is really exciting because you get to put your input, and then you get to learn a lot because you get to tell them like how you want it to do it, how you want the system to think, how you want the software to think to bring out the same idea, because the software can only give you information whatever you put in. So the second one is you get to work with R&D. There's actually a lot of students from Harvey Mudd who's in our engineering department. So what's big right now that we're trying to do is we're doing a 28-pack. That's what we're trying to do for the Christmas. And as you said earlier, it's end of the month, end of the year, so we're trying to hit our target. We haven't hit our target for the number of bottles that we're trying to sell, so we're trying to get a 28-pack. So this time, our engineering department is also reaching out to our department, which is our labels and shrink film. So we get to work with them, and then we get to tell them this is not possible. And also we're trying to do from 40 to 45 packs. So you get a lot of interaction with engineering as well. And also, you get a lot of interaction with QA because every time there's an NCRM, which is a non-conforming raw materials, you're the contact person for the 26 manufacturing plant and also with the QA because each plant will have a QA and also our corporate office will have a QA. So you're the contact person for that one. So it gets, every day can be different. So you might be having dinner, I might be having dinner with my family and my friends, and a plant director will be calling me because it was mentioned earlier that a plant, a line down would cause that their efficiency is going to go down, the number of bottled water that we produce is going to go down, then it's going to affect our bottom line. So that's one thing that I would say that for my day-to-day is I have to be very flexible. I have to make sure that I have my laptop with me all the time. Everywhere I go, it's in my car or I have my cell phone with me. So yeah, it's mostly a lot of dealing with I would say 25% of the time I deal with my Excel and also our software just to make sure that everything is all set. And 75% is dealing with the plants, dealing with other departments, because you also have to deal with procurement, because you have to make sure that, okay, if we're getting paid this much, you have to negotiate with them to tell them what your needs are and also for the discounts. So a lot of things going on. So if like, maybe after dinner, if you want more information on how I do primarily on labels, just like reach out to me.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. My turn. Well, as we all learned from, my major was business administration. And certainly I learned a lot from Dr. Peter Drucker. And his, one of his things impact me a lot is management by objectives. And so that become my management philosophy and always my principle of my life. So coming back to talk about business, and as we all know, business is full of opportunities as well as risks. So every day we face the opportunities and risks as well. So in terms of opportunity, we manage how we're going to ship more and deliver more and produce more to fulfill the orders and make more money and so be more profitable. At the same time, we have to manage the risks. So now, the challenging to us nowadays, because we have been in business for 36 years now. Since 82, we started the business, 35 years. Anyway, so we have different businesses, as I mentioned. So we have been dealing with all the large retail stores, Walmart, Target, and all sort of a Bed Bath and Beyond and so on. At the same time, we deal with another industry, which is wheels. We have to deal with tire rack and the big O's and discount tires and so on and so forth. So for that portion of the business, it's fine. But we used to bring in the finished products. So we built up the distribution networks and have all the distributors and stores selling the products for us and build up the brand images. And we have several branding and quite popular in the market. And so people go after our brand names. However, because our market's kind of changed, because the internet sales make the brick and mortar stores become diminishing. And so we have more and more of the customers asking us to do the drop ship. It's a big challenge to us now. So you talk about, we used to sell by the pallets, by the trucks. Now we sell by the piece. So we have a big challenge of changing the entire distribution center into pallet sales or truck sales into pieces sales. And sometimes, especially on Monday, one of the customers can send in 3,000, 4,000 orders to you, and they bombarded you. And of course, some of them without an EDI, then we have to key in every single piece of order. Man, that is a big challenge. So we are facing all the challenges. So well, it's good to face because that's a trend you have to follow. When you are in Rome, you have to do as Romans do, right? You cannot do it, you better follow that. So we cannot change the market, we better follow that. So we are in the transition of changing the regular traditional distribution networks into a more and more of the internet drop ship And that's one of the challenges we have. And so we talk about automations and so on. So that's one thing. And the other thing is we have been in business for 35 years, and using the management by objectives, we set all the sales target on a weekly basis, monthly basis, quarterly basis, annual basis. So every day we had to monitor which department hit the target or not. So with all the challenges we have, luckily we are still so much more above our break-even point. However, oftentimes we still cannot hit the sales target because we are trying to change buying the finished products only. We try to bring more of the jobs back to the United States, because oftentimes I feel bad for, I'm one of the guys to outsource our job over to the overseas market. So I try to adjust that, not only just because of the market trend, but also my obligation. So we try to buy the product locally, and as much as of the blanks from overseas. So we can create a printing, because we do a lot of the team stuff items, products. So logo is very important. So we just go ahead, do the printing, final finish over locally in our warehouse. So with that, the challenges will be missing parts. We have blanks, but we don't have the parts. We don't have the printing die, and so on and so forth. That is causing a heck of a problem. And you see my hair is getting less. That's one of the reasons, I guess. But anyway, but that's quite a challenge. And I think it's more and more of the American industry was certainly facing that as well, before we can really fully supply ourselves over here. Otherwise, it's going to be a challenge to everybody. And we are trying to reverse the entire trend versus 40 years ago, what we did. 40 years ago, because we were over here as a student in 1976, we still saw many of the manufacturing over in our country. And I saw overseas, door next to door, all the manufacturing site, regardless people living upstairs, manufacturing downstairs. And it's still happening overseas now. Certainly, they sacrifice the quality of life, but they achieve a lot of productions. And they achieve a lot of goals, making a lot of profit from everybody's pocket over here. So hopefully we can really coming back to bring the production come back to this nation. So therefore make our industry much easier, supply much easier, and then so make the supply demand chain much easier to handle. Not mentioning our product, we had to just lead time, sometimes you have to talk about 90 days. And you talk about on the floor, I had to spend 90 days of the cash flow onto the product here just in order to wait for the next wave to come in. Imagine if I can buy from next door, buy for Phillyne, I don't have to put any inventory. I say, Phillyne, give me one or give me 1,000. So that's the thing that I like to see it, and that's the thing that our demand supply chain have to face. This is something in the future we'd like to see that happen. But before then, our challenges are how are we going to bring the products from raw material to the finished product, and in between all the process, make sure that we can bring them in the right quantity, the right product, and with quality, and in time. If not on time, at least just in time. So you can control your inventory, and you don't overbought, so your boss is going to kick your butt. And it's because he's going to lose money on that. But imagine how important the supply and demand chain it is to affect the business. So I'll stop over here, Gary. Back to you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the slight digression into inventory management. Because if you haven't heard enough about inventory management, next semester in the spring, operations management with yours truly, you'll hear a lot more. So I love this. Okay, so moving along, I'd like to know from, well, this question is a little bit more difficult probably to answer for Wen and for Mike, but I'll ask anyway. How did you get into supply chain, right? And for Wen, yeah.
I have to, otherwise I cannot survive.
Exactly, right?
As a matter of
That's why
fact,
I thought, the question is probably not all that appropriate for you, right?
Gary,
Yeah?
if you don't mind, let me put a little bit here. To me, I think supply and demand, supply chain, actually, once you're born, you're in it. Because everything is demand and supply. Once you have a life, you have a demand. And with the demand, there's a supply. Without demand, supply is in vain. So who needs a supply for? If you sell something they don't want to buy, you make it for nothing. So I'm in it, and I have to, because I have to feed my family. I have to pay my bill, and I have to support my staff and their families. Thank you, Gary.
All right. Phillyne, how did you get into supply chain? Did you start in undergrad with a major in supply chain or logistics?
No,
or
actually, he was just asking me earlier how I got into supply chain. It's actually, I actually got into supply chain because of Drucker. My undergrad was in hotel and restaurant tourism management. So I came here, I was like, yay, I'm gonna go to grad school and I'm gonna go at the corporate office. That did not happen. So I did stayed for 1 semester and I did the project management under Professor Hovig. But that time, Drucker doesn't have the program yet, like KGI has, which is the TMP. So they were able to get me to the other school for a year-long project with Amgen in supply chain, and that was the time that I got in. We did some research. We did a lot of benchmarking of the 8 different industries, along with plans, plan make and deliver for Amgen, along with the other industries. And actually, Professor Hovig and Professor Gaukler was there as my resource that time, because I barely know anything about operations. So that's how I got into supply chain. I started to read more about it. I should have listened and took the CPIM while in school. I did not. So please, if you're a student, take it now, because it's easier to take this exam after taking the class. Because I took it after while I was working, and it was a little difficult because it's different when you're working and when you're learning all the stuff. So yeah, so it's easier to get it there. So that's how I got into supply chain. So I said, okay, this is really fun. It's really exciting, because when you think about it, supply chain encompasses a lot of, like, if you have one product, let's say you have a strawberry at the store, you're looking at it, but then there's a lot of work and effort that got into just to make sure that you have the strawberry during a non-strawberry season at Costco. So if you're going there, it's like, oh my God, there's strawberry here, they're really big. But if you guys don't think about how they have it harvested it, and how they made sure that when they were transporting it, it's not going to get like damaged or during transportation. It has to be during a cold transportation. So there's a lot of things that's how I found out when I was doing the benchmarking at Amgen. And yeah, and I started to read about it and just like started to talk to people who's in supply chain. Drucker was a really good resource that time. They were able to connect me to a lot of alumni in supply chain, and I did talk to them, and that's how I got into supply chain at Niagara, and I'm loving it, and I would really recommend it. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Mike?
Well, I guess in my case, I was born into it. When I was a kid, I grew up on our farm, and I began my early days as a youngster going with my dad into the flower market in downtown Los Angeles, and that was my first experience with buying and selling and moving flowers, and it's an exciting industry. It's very fast paced, and so that's where I grew up. That's what I knew, but I did spend many years getting my education, and there was a time frame there where my thoughts were to go into academia and become a researcher and a scientist. And ultimately, as I got closer to getting my degree, my wife and I, we talked about it. We looked at the opportunities, and I made the decision to get back into farming. And it's great, and it's a lot of fun. The thing that I love the most about it is you have to be innovative. You have to constantly change. You have to constantly recreate. There's not a day comes by where we don't find a way to do something better, something new, something more invigorating. And so it's really never dull. I'd like some dull days, I think, every once in a while. But generally speaking, it's exciting for me to be able to recreate, to come up with something new, to fix a problem, to fix a pattern, to solve a disease. And that's what farming's all about, and ultimately that's how I got into the world that I'm in.
Great, thank you. Lloyd?
Let's see, I was introduced to supply chain through the aerospace and defense. I started with a company called TRW. My undergraduate degree was in business, and so it started with a summer internship in Redondo Beach, and then I got involved with various aspects of supply chain, proposals and contract management and business management. Came back, finished my undergrad, and then came back and worked for TRW full-time. Started with a program called TDRS, which stands for Tracking Data Relay Satellite. So basically just a constellation of 7 satellites throughout at 22,000 miles up in the atmosphere. And basically the aerospace and defense it's primarily aerospace and defense, use it as a communication. So basically it's a relay, so a signal goes up from one satellite and it bounces up, comes to a ground station, it comes up around wherever it needs to in the world, whoever needs it. So I was involved with the electrical power system. So I was a consolidated procurement manager for various programs. And that basically dealt with solar cells, cover glasses, and batteries. So basically it was, as a satellite goes up and it's orientated to the sun, it creates its own energy stored in the batteries, and then goes to the dark side, and they use that energy to continue satellite operations. And so part of the supply chain there was developing suppliers, managing and negotiating the costs, the schedule, and that happened through various contract types depending upon the complexity of the requirement of the power system that we needed. And so that's just kind of evolved from there.
Great, thank you. Let me ask one last question, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience in the interest of time. So in fairly briefly, what do you think are useful skills for students to have for entering into the field of supply chain management, right? Can you come up with whatever 1, 2, 3 really important skills that somebody ought to have if they want to pursue a career and be successful in supply chain? Who wants to start?
Well,
Lloyd wants to start.
I'll just start off with you need to have solid project management skills. You have to have, as far as in my world, you need to be a good negotiator, so you have to have negotiation skills. You need to be able to manage schedules, you need to be able to manage costs, you need to be able to manage budgets. You need to have analytic skills. We need innovators. I heard her say before, you're always trying to do things better than they've been done in the past. So we're always looking for continuous process improvement. And then I guess I'll just kind of leave it at, we're looking for leadership skills, leadership characteristics, values, ethics, and integrity. There's a lot of companies that do what we do. We have a lot of competitors, but if you listen to a lot of the people that we get from various places that recruited, they say, well, one thing what attracted us to Northrop Grumman was the fact that you didn't want to just be the best, but you wanted to be the best with the highest of ethics and integrity. And if you look around all the things that are happening around the world, companies that are getting charged and paying hefty fees and being debarred, you'll kind of see the importance of that.
Thank you.
I think, well, first, we want to look for smart people. That's first and foremost. But I think really you need people, at least in our world, that are going to be creative and nimble, because this is not a cookie cutter business. It's not something where you can develop a formula. And, there are a lot of days that you can have a formula and you just follow a pattern and you do the routine. But if you're not creative, if you're not able to make decisions at moments without asking for permission to do something, if you don't do that, those bad days can kill you. Okay, the routine days are the routine days, but when things go awry, like we're dealing with right now with the supply chain issues, if we're not able to solve those, if we don't have creativity and people that really know the industry, know the patterns, know where to go, and able to make those decisions in a moment's notice, the bottom line damage that can be done is tremendous, and it can happen very, very quickly. So creativity and being quick on your feet when a problem arises is really important, I think.
Well, one thing that I would say, it's going to be more specific about my company, because we're very fast-paced, vertically integrated company. So I would say you have to be very flexible. As I've said earlier, we do bring our laptops, and we're on call because our manufacturing plants are 24/7. We do have to support them, so that's one thing. Second is get your certifications. You're already in school. You have all those extra time. Do it. It's an edge. If you're applying for a job, and also if you're talking to people, it makes it look like you're very serious about entering into the supply chain business. So that's one thing that I can say. And third one would be self-management, which is a really big thing here at Drucker. It's going to be very fast-paced. So if you don't manage yourself, you're going to get stressed out and you're going to get burned out. And also you're going to ruin the relationship with your supplier, with the people around you. So that's one thing that I would say, yeah. Managing yourself. It's different. It's different now. If you're gonna say that if everything is working well, then you're okay. But usually you'll see how the attitude of people are when things are not going. So let's say I have a shipment of 30 days on hand for labels for one plant, and suddenly a hurricane came in, and FedEx was calling me that, oh, I'm sorry, I cannot deliver this, and everybody would be like on top of you, and they're going to start calling you, and you're going to be so stressed because you have to explain what happened, and you have to come up with different plans. So one thing that I would say is you have to know how to manage yourself, and also manage your relationship with other people, because this is a job that you have to deal with a lot of people. You have to know how to work with different people. You have to know how to talk to an inventory person, to a supplier, to a plant director. You have to know what their KPIs are, so you know. So if you're talking to a plant director, you talk to them about their efficiency, because that's going to affect their bonus. You don't ever want to do anything that will affect anybody's bonus. So that's one thing, yeah. And then, so that's one thing. So yeah, it's going to be certifications, management of yourself, and also with other people, yeah.
Thank you, Phillyne. I would say ditto, 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 right? So that's done, right, Gary? But basically, other than what we agree with everybody said over here, very remarkable remarks. I think it's several things I would like to add on. Number one, I'll suggest you want to get involved into this, you have to understand the theory of economics theory of the comparative advantages, because that theory dominates all the supply and demand, because that tells you who can produce the best and what can you produce the best, or what do you need. So therefore, you can know where to go. You know where the materials come from, and so from where and who to supply, and then all the production process, so you know how can they make the material into the next material, the components and so on and so forth, and become a finished product. Without knowing that, you cannot be a good supply demand management people. Then from there, you have to understand very well about the demand side. As I said at the beginning, without knowing demand, you know the supply, it's in vain. your supply plan will be totally lost. You have to know demand very well. That means the demand as well as the sales department, so you know what's happening. So therefore, you can come up with a good supply plan. At the same time, you have to talk to your boss, talk to finance department. What is the budget? And so therefore, you can come up with a good plan, where to buy, what to buy, when to bring in, what quantity to bring in, and so on and so forth. And you have to figure out all the logistic, lead time, and so on and so forth, so you can bring the right products in the right quantity, in good quality, and in time, so therefore nothing is disrupted. So you can make everything to be turning around and with a 360-degree perfect circle, because you are the pivot person over there. Everybody circling around you, you are the one making the things happen. Otherwise, the whole organization will fail on you. So that is very important. So demand, you have to do that. Then thirdly, you have to be very, very analytical. You got to be very good in computer. And I am a computer layman, but my wife is a computer expert. So for that, she can compensate me on this side. But anyway, you have to know how to use the data, and you know how to analyze the data. So therefore, you know you can make the projection. Otherwise, you're going to buy wrong product, or buy wrong quantity at the wrong time, and using the wrong people to be the logistic to do that for you. So that's very important. That's a key point to make you successful. So very analytical, and also you have to be, like they already said, you have to be very committable. I mean, communicate in a communication skill. You communicate with people, and also you have to be very good in coordination, because you're the one making things happen. You're the one bringing the products. You're the one knowing that what to bring in and so on. So you are very, regardless how much you're being paid for, but you are very important people in the organization. So you have to do that. So with all these skills, certainly you can be successful. And of course, you have to be a team player. Enjoy your job. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I'll open it up to questions from the audience. Anything you ever wanted to know? Yes, there is a first hand. Okay.
I actually have a question for Mike. I was looking at your website, and I saw that your company was the first to develop a coaching management program, and I was just curious about that. Can you elaborate on it?
Sure. In cut flowers and in perishable commodities like that, strawberries and such, cold chain management is critical. Otherwise, the life of the plant, the life of the flower is not as long as it could be. So our objective is to get the flower, once we harvest it, as quickly out of the field and into a refrigerated environment. And we want to drop the temperature down to as close to 32 degrees as we possibly can and put the flower into hibernation. That allows it to have maximum appeal to the homeowner when they finally bring it into the house. We have a very strong relationship with the University of California. It's a land-grant university and has done a lot of research on advancement of agricultural commodities, flowers being one of them. My uncle, who ran our farm prior to me, also got his PhD from UC Riverside. And so we've worked very closely with the researchers on the campuses and throughout the network to ensure that we did everything we possibly could to make sure there was maximum value in our products. And cold chain clearly was one of those pieces. We're one of the first organizations to have coolers and a pre-cooler on the farm to ensure that happens. In the early days, farmers farmed and distributors distributed, and there was a big gap from the time you harvested it till you got it to the distributor, and we had the coolers and facilities on site. The other part of it is once the flower gets into the cold chain, you don't want it to leave, because once it leaves, it warms up, it cools down, you end up with a whole host of other problems if you break the chain. So we committed many years ago to ensure that our flowers stayed cold from the time they're harvested until the time they actually get to our distributors across the country.
Thank you.
I have a question, and this is probably going to be better for Phillyne, Wen, and Mike, but I also have a question for Lloyd. But the first one is, because demand variability is so critically important, you were talking about one, what data or how are you forecasting to make sure that you are as closely to that target as possible? And are you also using some type of sales and organization planning meetings with regards to demand variability? And the question for Lloyd was, you can just kind of remember this, is did you identify what was the key variable that was missing that caused that plant shutdown? So those are my two questions.
Yes. Well, I think we should ask this question to the big company like Lloyd has. Instead of me, a small company, I can only give you the midget answer. But basically, when we start a business, I have no records to go after for. So basically, we just build up the information by ourselves from the market, and so from whoever we can talk to in the industry, and also based on the daily order we received. So we pretty much know, was this, of course, at the beginning, you had to buy something, you had to run the risk, and pray God, say, these are products I bought, I spent money, and can be sold. But basically, this is, we got started. But once you build up, of course, like I said, the information, you have to gather the information like marketing study taught you to do so. But then the actual number you have to really build up through your experience. And since we are in business for 35 years, pretty much doing the same in the same industry, so we build up all the data, and we have a very good comprehensive data bank. And so that's why, as you already said, we come up with all the seasonal effect as well as monthly of the sales in 35 years. And so we know the trend, and we know what's making the trend for different variations. So with that, our computer, what we do, we use is the SAP is a very comprehensive, very stringent computer system, German-made. But anyway, with that, they can give you a very good projection to help you out for your projection for demand. And from there, we have to use our intelligence, human intelligence, to modify that. So, because a lot of changes, computer doesn't know, so we do know. So we have to modify that so the number will come up, and computer will come up, eject out. These are the numbers suggested you to buy, and we'll tell you, say, according to all this season, and how for the 3 or 4 months calculation, they'll suggest you this team or this product, and for this style, this is the number you should buy. And we have to use the human intelligence to justify that. So that's pretty much what we do. Okay, I hope I answered your question.
So at least for us, we do manage our demand variability in 2 sectors. So the first one is we have a production forecast for each of our plant, and we do have a historical data. And from those 2 forecasts, we do have a resultant forecast. So that's what the resultant forecast is, what we use to maintain our days on hand within the network. So we do have 30 days in hand at the supplier, 30 days in hand at the plant, 30 days at the supplier, and 30 days to print. So that's 90 days. So that should cover our variability. But at the same time, we do have weekly meetings with our sales. So let's say, because we have a lot of customers, so if Kroger doesn't want to, they don't want to let us know in advance, but we do ask them to let us know in advance. So let's say Kroger will have an ad, let's say 2 for $4 for a 24 pack. They would let us know by Tuesday, so that would be something that we would have. We manage it per SKU per plant. So let's say our plant A is managing a lot of our Costco labels. So we would produce all our Costco in one plant. So if there's a lot of variability, it will not affect a lot of the plants, other plants that we have. And then plant B would just manufacture great value. So if there's a lot of variability in Costco or great value, that's okay, because one of our plants are continuously manufacturing those. So we do manage it per SKU, and we look at it we look at the safety stock per SKU, if it's a top item, if it's a customer that's known for ordering with short lead time, or if this is a customer that by contract, they have to give 14 days. So we manage it per SKU at the plant level. But in general, we do have 30, 60, and 90. Yeah.
In our business, really, there's a lot of different levels that comes into play. Some are really slow paced, and some are really fast paced when it comes down to it. Because when we're looking at our farming operation, we don't plan today for tomorrow. Okay. In fact, most of the crops we have in production, about 400 acres, and we produce about 50 different product lines, anywhere from about a 1.5 million units a year down to some that are maybe 10,000 units a year for a special niche. A very heavy percentage of those are perennial crops that take anywhere from 1 to 5 years to come into production. So we're looking well out to determine what we think the consumer trends are going to be, what products are going to be the most profitable, which ones we want to increase, which ones we want to eliminate. And of course, that process is very, very dynamic right now, because we're going through a lot of scrutiny, a lot of change. So really, we look at we're looking way out, but realistically, we tighten that down. We're looking now like a year ahead, say, okay, well, for next year, how much do we need to plan on? How much do we need to make sure we have off the farm based on historical performance of each of the crops, the trends that they're going on? We use a lot of data to understand what that is and make our best guess as to where it's going. Now, as we get closer to market, realize that most of the products that we're dealing with have about a 3 to 4 day turn time. So we bring them in, we order them, they generally come in within 3 days, and they're out the door within 3 days. Anything longer than that in most products is going to compromise the value and the customer experience. So you have the farming group that's doing long-range planning together with the sales team, and then you have a much shorter term, weekly, monthly forecasting process that we go through to determine how, staffing, manpower, labor needs to ensure that we come through. And then we have weekly sales meetings, sales planning meetings at all the levels to determine that we optimize what's going to come in. Now, predictability for the holidays is much easier than in between holidays. The demand curves are understood. You can tell the trend of a red rose and say, well, the red rose is doing this going into the holiday. We expect it to do that through the holiday. I remember when I started, though, especially at the farm level, it was a bunch of good old guys doing their thing, and we would have a number of. It was really a daily guess. You know, the guys would come in, they look in the cooler, and say, "Oh, I think I need 1,000 bunches of this." And they'd send the crews out to pick 1,000 bunches. And I worked with them for a while, learned what they were doing, a couple of years. And one day I sat down with the lead sales manager and said, look, you know, especially on these longer term products, I think we can forecast this. I don't think we need to wait today for tomorrow or what have you. And he told me I was full of you know what. And so we sat down and I said, no, look, you know, if we sell 10,000 bunches this week, this year, and that's 5,000 bunches than it was last year, then we're going to be selling 50% more next week. And it took a little bit of doing, but ultimately I got him to use the data and do predictive curves and be able to determine where we were headed. And it really allowed us to optimize our efficiencies. The crews in the field weren't running around day to day. We could do longer range planning on staffing, and it all worked. So data is key. Data is key.
Let's see, I'll answer your question, but it'd be a hybrid answer because it's going to include part of the first question. So let me just go back just real quick, just kind of like set it up. So when we get a government contract, still goes back. Let's go back to the proposal phase. We submit a proposal. We have a bill of material. The bill of material has, has the item, quantities, pricing, lead times. Okay, so that all goes into an MRP system. The planners get involved, and so my group gets a purchase requisition. And so, well, first of all, before we get it, the supply chain planning organization, supply chain planning analyst, comes up with the release strategy. The release strategy is based upon the need dates of when that particular item is required on the floor. And that's all based upon lead times, et cetera. So sometimes when we get a contract award, by the time we get a purchase requisition released, it's already into the lead time and it's non-supporting. So we do have those situations. The way that lead time is determined is the 42 days for my team to prepare the PR, and then the lead time of whatever the product is, and then we have goods receipt. So the time it gets to our factory, whatever those days are, just add up all those days and then you kind of prioritize this, when we need to place orders. So going back to this particular situation yesterday, it was placed on a blanket purchase order. So it wasn't a discrete purchase order for a quantity. It was released against a blanket. The further complicated, with a company like ours, there's been a lot of acquisitions of various companies. So I think Northrop Grumman, over one point in time, we acquired like 14 different companies and spent 10 years. So what was happening there? We were buying things from companies, and so we just bought them up, and so they became make items. Just recently, last week, we bought Orbital ATK. Those are satellite boosters, and so that's another instance. But back to yesterday. So what we found out, immediately once I got the information or the call, I requested a root cause and corrective action. I just want to find out, how did this happen? It shouldn't have happened. And so then let me just step back one more time. So there's been a lot of consolidation within our company. So we went from 7 sectors down to 5 sectors. So we have heritage companies. And so when that happens, the accounting system, they always work because the financials always have to talk to each other. But sometimes the operation systems, the MRP systems, that stuff doesn't talk. So we have one instance of SAP that doesn't talk to another instance. And so then you have independent manual demand that's developed versus a system where we have MRP demand, EDI. And so basically the issue yesterday was the supplier PR was released. So the PO was not released to the supplier because that was a manual transaction. Had it been EDI, it would happen automatically. So it happened probably 30 days later than it should have, and hence the problem that happened yesterday. So they were initially told that the part would be in November 27th, but we had everybody working on it, and so we kind of cut that down the line to be back up in a couple of days. But that's part of the day-to-day challenges of trying to make things happen and figure things out.
Great. Maybe we have time for one more question from the audience. Yes.
I think data is very important, like Mike said, in supply chain. And I heard Wen said he's using SAP, and Lloyd said you're using SAP. What about you two? What software or MRP software that you use to accommodate your data to give you a forecast to do the better supply chain job that you need to do?
I am so embarrassed to say we're still using Excel. We are.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yes, we are.
I need to learn how to do that.
We are. We are still using Excel. Right now, we've been working with Logility. That's a software that we're working with IT right now to help us with the forecast, with the production planning to be in the software. But yeah, it's mostly for us Excel. We have a shared database with everybody in strategic planning and also with production planning. And that's how we're sharing data and information right now. We have an open workforce. So yeah, so that's why that's why I said earlier it was a lot of communication with a lot of people because we're looking at Excel. We have to send it through emails, and then that's how we manage the data. So it's a lot of data management. We do have planning. Yeah, we call it planning support. They're the one who pulls the data from all our 26 plants, and then we we export it every day and every morning when I come in, and then I plug it in on my Excel, and then I take a look at it. So yeah, but we are working on our Logility software. Hopefully it will be, we're doing the parallel planning right now. So hopefully before we hit the summer, which is our busiest season, we should be able to use Excels right now. So I mean the software, but hopefully it will work. So yeah, that's it. No.
In our instance, we operate primarily off of a small ERP program that's sales, order entry, distribution, and finance, and that drives just about everything we do. But it's very problematic. In fact, we just started an initiative today to reevaluate that and take a look company-wide. What's the best solution? I think over the years, one of our problems is we've tried to find a one-size-fits-all. And our business really is a number of diverse businesses that are doing a variety of different things. And so we're going to reevaluate where we're at. In fact, what kicked it off was, I think, mentioned the importance of online platforms. And a number of our customer base, even though we're not consumer focused or faced, a number of our customers are now looking and wanting to be able to order online, and our platform and our provider says they can do it, and then you look at the functionality of what they want to put out there, and it's not even close to what our expectations would be. So we're reevaluating that. But in addition to that, with our farming aspect, we have a number of other small databases that we use to manage other forms of data. So whether it's labor, in our case, labor is huge. It's 40% of our cost structure. So we monitor our workers in the field, where they are, what they do, what fields they're in, what crops they're doing, what activities they're doing. And we've generated a mountain of data that we crunch in a number of different ways in order to make sure we know who the top performers are, we know what the top performing crop is, we know which fields are producing or not producing. In addition, we have other databases that monitor and manage our inputs, whether they're fertilizers or in many instances when we're controlling insects and diseases. Nobody wants to get a flower and have an aphid crawl off onto the dinner table and go scampering across. So unfortunately we have to make sure they're dead. And so we have a lot of crop protection materials that we use to control those. They're very expensive. We don't want to spray them, so we monitor very tightly where are we putting them, how are we putting them on, and how much are they costing us. And so that's a whole nother database. And so these are all kind of little specialty databases that are used in various fashions ultimately to roll up into the end result.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the panel for so graciously sharing their expertise and their experience with us. So I personally very much enjoyed our discussion here. I also enjoyed the questions from the audience. So thank you very much. And if we could have one round of applause for panelists. Thank you.